All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, as the case is for some of us. We are beginning today with the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, Skandha 3, Chapter 10. Janamejaya said, O Maharshi, who was Satyavrata, the Brahman whose name you have just taken? In what country was he born? Of what nature was he? Please describe all these to me and satisfy my curiosity. So to recap slightly, there was just a mention in praise of the power of the Bija mantra of Saraswati. There was a reference made to this Brahman named Satyavrata, who so it specified the bija, the bijakshara syllable we're talking about is Aim, the bija of Saraswati Devi. And there was mention in praise of its power that a Brahman, in terror of a tiger, while just crying the sound Ai, accidentally invoked her and was saved. So Janamejaya is asking to hear more details of this. How did he hear that sound Ai? How did he repeat that word? How came out the success to him, that illiterate Brahman, at that very instant, since it was mentioned he was illiterate? And how is it that that great goddess, who is omniscient and omnipresent, was pleased with him? Kindly describe this interesting incident in detail. Suta said, Vyasa, the son of Satyavati, thus asked by the king, addressed in the following pure, sweet, and highly liberal words. Vyasa said, Hear, O Raja, you are the best and foremost in the Kuru clan. What I before heard in the assembly of the Munis, I am now relating that ancient story, highly beneficial to you. O best of the Kurus, once in my peregrinations in the holy places of pilgrimages, I came to the Naimisharanya forest, that highly sacred place frequented by Munis. At that time, there were staying there Sanaka, Sanatana, and the other sons of Brahma, who were Jivan Muktas, who were liberated while living. I went there and bowed down to the Munis and took my seat. Then the religious conversations ensued there in the assembly, when the great sage Maharshi Jamadagni began to question the Munis in the following terms. O high-minded, excellent ascetics and Munis, there has arisen a great doubt in my mind. I am desirous to have that doubt solved in this assembly of the Maharshis. O all-knowing Maharshis that have fulfilled your vows, O givers of one's honor, now my question is this. Of the following devas, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Indra, Varuna, Agni, Kubera, Vayu, Vishvakarma, Kartikeya, Ganesha, Surya, the two Ashvins, Bhaga, Husha, Chandra, and the other Grahas, who is the first and best to be worshipped, that can easily be served, who is very quickly satisfied and grants the desired boons? Kindly tell me this as early as possible. Thus questioned by the Muni Jamadagni, Maharshi Lomasha, one in the assembly, spoke. O Jamadagni, here in reply to your question. The goddess of energy, Shakti Devi, is the best of the devas, most excellent and highest to be worshipped. Those who want welfare, they ought to worship this supreme Shakti. She is the Paraprakriti, the highest nature, the Brahman, conditioned by Maya. She grants all desires, does good to all, pervades everywhere, and is the mother of Brahma and the other high-souled devas. She is the Adiprakriti, and is the root of this gigantic tree of the universe. If anyone calls the Devi in remembrance or distinctly utters her name, she fulfills all the desires of the human beings. If anybody worships her, she is at once filled with mercy and becomes ready to grant boons. O Munis, how once on a time a Brahman uttering one letter of her mystical mantra obtained her grace, I am now describing that most auspicious history before you. Be pleased to hear. Once on a time there lived in the country of Kosala a famous Brahman named Devadatta. And here the translator adds a little footnote to explain Kosala. So I will go ahead and share it. Kosala is a country situated, according to Ramayana, along the banks of the Sarayu River, also called the Gogra River in northern India. It was divided into Uttara Kosala and Dakshina Kosala, the northern half and the southern half. The former, northern Kosala, is also called Ganda, and it must have therefore signified the country north of Ayodhya. Ayodhya was the capital of Kosala, comprising Gonda and Bahraich. Those are the more modern names of those regions of India, districts of Uttar Pradesh. Aja and Dasharatha, etc., are said to have ruled over the province, a couple of famous kings of Kosala. At the time of Rama's death, his two sons, Kusha and Lava, reigned respectively at Kushavati in southern Kosala, in the valleys of the Vindhya hills, and at Sravasti in northern Kosala. So once on a time in Kosala, there was a famous Brahmin named Devadatta. He had no issues, meaning no children, and therefore started duly according to the prescribed rules a yajna called Putreshti for the sake of obtaining children. On the banks of the Tamasa River, the Brahmin erected a temporary building, or like an open shade, for performing the ceremony, and there built an altar and invited the Brahmins versed in the Vedas and clever in performing yajna rites. There he placed the fire and began to perform, according to the strict rules, the Putreshti yajna. In that yajna, Suhotra, the best of the munis, acted the part of the Brahma, that is the priest. So the Brahma in this technical usage refers to the superintendent of a Soma yajna, a yajna at which Soma will be offered, which the Putreshti is a Soma yajna. Yajnavalkya acted the part of Advaryu. So that's the officiating priest whose duty is to measure the ground, build the altar, prepare the sacrificial vessels, supply the requisite wood and water, light the fire, and so on, the priest of the Yajurveda. Brahaspati acted the part of the Hota, that is the priest who offers the oblations into the fire and recites the mantras of the Rig Veda. Paila acted the part of the Prastota, Govila that of the Udgata, that is the one who sings the Samaveda, and the other munis acted as assistants, since each of the above has 3 assistants. These were all duly paid their remunerations. The Hota Govila, an excellent reciter of the Samaveda hymns, began to sing in accented tones called the Svarita, in the 3 accents of Uddatta, Anudatta, and Svarita, and he sang the Ratantara Sama in 7 tunes. Then he began to draw breath frequently, and consequently there was a break in time in the accent of Govila. Seeing this, Devadatta was angry and immediately said to Govila, "Well, Govila, you are the foremost of the munis, and still you are doing your work like a quite illiterate man. I fear obstacles may arise in the getting of my son in this my Putreshti yajna." Govila then became much enraged at this insult and told Devadatta, "Your son will be illiterate, hypocrite, and dumb. Behold, every being is subject to breathing and respiring, and it is very hard to control them. There is no fault of mine in the accents of my songs being thus broken. It is strange that you, being intelligent, cannot understand this." Being afraid to hear this curse from Govila, Devadatta became very sorry and said, "O Muni, I have done no serious offense. Why are you so offended without any cause? See, the munis are void of anger, and they always give delight to others. O best of Brahmins, my offense is very trifling. Why have you inflicted on me so severe a curse? I was already under the mental agony, since I had no children, and now you have made me suffer more pain. For the Vedic pundits declare that it is better not to have any son than to have an illiterate, stupid son. The more so when a Brahmin son is illiterate, he is blamed by one and all. An illiterate son is like a Shudra or a beast. He is unfit for any action. O Brahmin, what shall I do with an illiterate son? An illiterate Brahmin is like a Shudra, consequently not an object to be engaged in any act of worship or of gifts. He is not deserving to do any of the karmas. A Brahmin bereft of the knowledge of the Vedas, living in a country, is treated as a Shudra by the Raja of the place and is liable to pay taxes, since the priestly class at the time were exempt from taxes. Whoever wants to have any fruit in any action will never invite an illiterate Brahmin to take his seat in the ceremony relating to the Pitris or the Devas. The king will consider an illiterate Brahmin as if a Shudra, and will never engage him in any religious ceremony, but will order him to do the work of a farmer in cultivating fields. rather to perform the funeral ceremonies by erecting a kushabakta than to engage an illiterate Brahmin for the purpose. One should give food to an illiterate Brahmin just sufficient to fill his belly and no more. If he does not do that, the giver and especially the receiver are subject to go down to Naraka. Fie to a kingdom where honor is shown to the illiterate stupid Brahmins. Where no difference is observed when seats, worship, and gifts are given to various persons, sages should draw their inference how the literate and illiterate persons are treated there. When the illiterate fools become haughty, when they are paid honor and gifts, literary persons should not dwell there. The wealth of the wicked goes to the enjoyments of the bad persons, for the neem trees, though abounding richly in fruits, are enjoyed only by crows. Again, on the other hand, if the Brahmins versed in the Vedas study the Vedas even after they have taken their food, still his father and forefathers are happy and play cheerfully in their heavens. Therefore, O Govila, you being the foremost of the Brahmins who are versed in the Vedas, what have you said just now? See, in this world, death is rather to be preferred than to have an illiterate son. How is it then that you have cursed me that I would get an illiterate son when you are the best one, highly qualified with knowledge? O high-minded one, you are capable to relieve the distressed. I am bowing down to your feet. Show your mercy and reconsider your curse. Lomasha said, O Munis, Devadatta, saying these words, fell prostrate at his feet and began to eulogize him in very pitiful words, being very much grieved and with tears in his eyes. Seeing him thus distressed, Govila was moved with pity. Persons that are noble have their anger satiated after only a short while. The anger of the ignoble lasts for a long time. Water is naturally cool, but it gets hot in contact with fire or heat, and no sooner the heat is drawn away, water gets again cooled quickly. The merciful Govila then addressed the distressed Devadatta. Your son, though at first illiterate, will afterwards be very learned. The Brahmin Devadatta was very glad on getting this boon. Then, completing the yajna, he rewarded the Brahmins with their due dakshinas and dismissed them. In due course of time, his fair chaste wife Rohini, like the asterism Rohini, in other words, she was named after Rohini Nakshatra, became pregnant. Devadatta performed the Garbhadhana and Pumsavana ceremonies. Those are two yajnas performed, or technically not yajnas, sanskara rites performed during pregnancy, and other purificatory rites duly. He performed the Simantonnayana ceremony according to the rules and considered his Putreshti yajna successful and made various offerings to the Brahmins. In the auspicious Lagna, when Rohini Nakshatra was present, and in the on an auspicious day, his wife Rohini gave birth to a male child. Devadatta performed the nativities of his newborn child and saw its face. Next, that knower of the Puranas, Devadatta, kept the name of the child as Utatya. When the son was 8 years old, Devadatta performed the Upanayana ceremony duly, his investiture with the sacred thread. Next, the child was made to accept the vow of brahmachari, and Devadatta made him study the Vedas. But the child could not pronounce a single word and used to sit simply like a stupid boy. Though tried in various ways to read and write, that wicked boy never paid the slightest attention, but simply sat idly. Seeing this, his father was very sorry and much grieved. Thus 12 years passed, yet the boy could not learn how to perform his Sandhya Bandhana duly. So he's now 20 years old. The rumor went abroad that Utatya, the son of Devadatta, turned out very illiterate. All the Brahmanas, ascetics, and other persons came to learn this fact. Wherever Utatya used to go in any forest on hermitage, the people used to laugh at him, ridiculed his father and mother, and began to chide that illiterate son. Thus blamed by his father, mother, and all other persons, dispassion occupied the heart of Utatya. In other words, he didn't really care about other people, since no one was friendly to him. Once, when rebuked by his father and mother that it was better to have a blind and lame son instead of an illiterate brute, Utatya took recourse to renunciation, and he went to a dense forest. On the banks of the Ganga, in a beautiful spot free from obstacles, he built a beautiful hut and began to subsist on the roots and fruits of the forest with a collected mind. Having made the excellent vow, I will never speak untruth, and holding the vow of celibacy, he lived in that beautiful hermitage. Thus, and so very clearly, it's not at all that he was unintelligent. He's perfectly able to single-handedly build a house and so on. Thus ends the 10th chapter and the 3rd skandha of Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa relating to the story of Satyavrata. Chapter 11. Lomasha said, O Munis, Uttatya, the son of Devadatta, was quite ignorant of anything in the Vedas, japam, meditation of the deity, worship of devas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, bhuta shuddhi, mantra, kilaka, gayatri, shaucha. Shaucha is rules of cleanliness, rules how to bathe, achamana, pranagnihotra, the offering of a yajna, hospitality, sandhya, collecting fuels for oblations and offering of oblations. Any of the spiritual or ritual teachings of Sanatana Dharma, he did not understand any of it. Daily he rose in the morning and somehow or other rinsed his mouth and washed his teeth and bathed in the Ganga river without any mantras. That stupid fellow ate indiscriminately. He did not know what to eat and what not to eat. During the midday, he collected fruits from the forest and used to eat them. But he always spoke truth while he stayed there. Never did he say any untruth. The people of that place, seeing this, named him Satyatapa. That Uttatya did no good or bad to anybody. He slept peacefully and blissfully, but he used to think when he would die, thus his troubles would be ended. He felt that the life of an illiterate Brahmin is a curse. His death would be a better alternative. He used to think like this: fate has made me a fool. I do not find any other cause for it. Oh, I got the exceedingly good birth amongst men, but all this has been rendered in vain by fate. As a fair woman if barren, a cow if giving no milk, and a tree without any fruits are all useless, so fate has rendered my life too quite useless. Why am I cursing fate? This is all the fruits of my past karma. In my previous life, I never wrote a book and presented to a good Brahmin, hence I am illiterate in this birth. These are all probably things that he's heard his parents say to him. In my former birth, I did not impart any knowledge to my favorite pupils, hence I am wicked and accursed Brahmin in this birth. I never performed any religious asceticism in any holy place. I did not serve the saints. I never worshipped the Brahmins with any offerings. For all these reasons, I am now born of perverted intellect in the present birth. Many a son of the Munis have learnt the meanings of the Vedas and the Shastras, and I am whiling away my time thus in a quite illiterate condition by some wretched combinations of incidents. I do not know how to perform tapasya. What is the use then of my attempting to do so? I am a very bad luck, and thus my good resolve will not be crowned with success. I consider fate to be the strongest of all, fie on one's own prowess. For actions done with effort and hard labor are frustrated entirely by fate. Time can never be overstepped. See, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Indra, and others are all under the influence of the Mahakala, the great time. O Rishis, thus arguing, said Lomasha, thus arguing in his mind, that Brahman's son Uttatya stayed there in that hermitage on the bank of the holy Ganga. And gradually he became thoroughly unattached to all things, and being peaceful, passed away his time in that forest without any habitations and humans, with great difficulty. Thus passed away 14 years in that forest where the Ganga was flowing. So he's now 34 years old. Still, he did not learn how to worship the supreme deity, how to make japam, nor did he learn any mantras. Simply, he lived there and whiled away his time. People surrounding that place, so clearly when he says in that forest without any habitations and humans, there are humans who live close enough that they know about him. He doesn't live with them. He's not in a village, but there are people not far away. So the people who lived nearby knew this much only of him, that this Muni spoke truth only, and hence his name was Satyavrata. This one name made him celebrated, that he is Satyavrata. Never did he say any untruth. Once on a time, a hunter named Nishada, now that would certainly not in fact be the hunter's name, that would be the hunter's community. Nishada was an entire people who lived in sort of the woods and the wild hills of the Vindhyas. So a Nishada hunter, exceedingly clever in hunting, came accidentally with bows and by chance. He wasn't seeking out Satyavrata. By chance, a Nishada hunter came with a bow and weapons in his hands while hunting a deer in that wide forest. He looked like a second god of death and seemed to be very cruel. That savage mountaineer, drawing his bow so as to touch the ear when he draws the arrow back, pierced a boar with his sharp arrows. The boar, being very much terrified, fled with enormous speed to the Muni Satyavrata. On seeing the distressed condition of the boar, trembling with fear and his body besmeared with blood, the Muni was moved with mercy. While the boar, pierced with arrows and besmeared with blood, was running away in front of him, mercy took possession of the Muni. Therefore the Muni began to tremble, and, agreeably to the human nature, exclaimed, "Ai, ai," meaning go to that direction. So he's pointing the boar in the direction he thinks will be safest and shouts, "Ai, ai," attempting to encourage the boar to take that course, which happened to be the seed mantram of the goddess of learning, with the left out from its end. That illiterate Brahmin's son never heard before that ai was the seed mantra of the Saraswati Devi, nor did he come to know of it by any other means. Accidentally, it came out of his mouth and he uttered it. And afterwards, that Mahatma, seeing the boar's distressed condition, was merged in deep sorrow. The boar entered trembling into the Muni's hermitage, very much distracted and being much pained with arrows. Being unable to find any other way, since it ran through the outer gate into his kind of garden courtyard area, and there's no other way out, the boar hid himself in the dense bushes. Instantly there appeared then before the Muni, the terrible savage hunter like a second god of death, with his bowstring stretched to his ear in pursuit of that boar. On seeing the Muni Satyavrata sitting there alone and silent on the kusha grass seat, the hunter bowed down to him and asked, "O Brahman, whither has that boar gone? I know very well everything about you, that you never speak untruth. Therefore, I am inquiring about the boar pierced by my arrows. My family members are all very hungry, and to feed them, I am come out in this hunting. This is the living ordained by fate. I have got no other means of maintaining the livelihood of my family. This I speak truly to you, whether it is bad or good, I will have to maintain my family with it. O Brahman, you are famous as Satyavrata. My family members are starving. Kindly reply quickly. Where has that boar gone?" Thus asked by the hunter, the Mahatma Satyavrata was merged in an ocean of doubt. He began to think, if I say I have not seen the boar, then my vow to speak the truth will be broken. The boar struck with arrows has gone this way, it is true. How can I tell a lie? Again, this man is hungry and is therefore asking. He will instantly kill the boar if he finds him. How then can I speak truth? When speaking out the truth causes injury and the loss of lives, that truth is no truth at all. Moreover, even untruth, when tempered with mercy for the welfare of others, is recognized as truth. Really speaking, whatever leads to the welfare of all the beings in this world, that is truth, and everything else is not truth. O Jamadagni, thus placed between the horns of a religious dilemma, what shall I do now so as to meet both the ends? To save the life of the boar, to do the welfare, as well as not to speak untruth. When Satyavrata saw the boar wounded by the arrow of the hunter, he, moved with pity, uttered the seed mantra of the goddess of learning. And now that most auspicious goddess, on account of his uttering her seed mantra, was very pleased and gave him the knowledge difficult to be attained otherwise. The door of all his knowledge opened out at once, and he became at once, instantly, the Rishi, the poet, like the ancient Muni Valmiki. Then that religiously disposed, merciful Brahman, aiming at truth, addressed that hunter before him with his bow in his arm, thus: "That force which sees never speaks, and that force which speaks never sees. O hunter, why are you asking me repeatedly, impelled by your own selfish desire?" The hunter, the killer of the animals, on hearing this, was disappointed in the matter of finding the boar, and ultimately he went back to his home. That Brahman turned out a poet like Varuna, and he became celebrated as Satyavrata, the speaker of truth in all the worlds. He began to recite the Sarasvata mantram duly, and by its influence became a pundit rivaled by none in this world. During every festival, the Brahmins chanted his praise, and the Munis used to narrate his story in detail. On hearing his fame spreading all around, his father, Devadatta, who forsook him before, recalled him to his hermitage and took him again in his family with great honor and affection. Therefore, O Raja, you should always worship and serve that great goddess, the prime energy, the Parashakti, the cause of all this universe. O Raja, with due Vedic rites you perform that yajna to that goddess which will surely yield results at all times and all desires. I already spoke to you about this. That great goddess is known as Kamada, the giver of all desires, for she grants all desires when people with devotion remember her, worship her, take her name, meditate on her, and eulogize her. O Raja, the wise sages ought to see the persons diseased, distressed, hungry, those without any wealth, the hypocrite, the cheat, the afflicted, the sensual, the covetous, the incapable, always suffering from mental troubles, also those who are wealthy with their children and grandchildren, prosperous, healthy, with enjoyments, versed in the Vedas, literary, kings, heroes, those who command over many men, those attended with relations and kinsmen and endowed with all good qualities, and then judge for themselves that those people did not worship the goddess, and therefore they were sufferers, and these people did worship the goddess, and hence they were happy in this world. Vyasa said, thus I heard from the mouth of Lomasha Muni in the assembly of the sages the good merits of the great goddess. O Raja, consider all these, and you will find that the highest goddess, the Bhagavati, is to be worshipped always with devotion and unselfish love. Here ends the 11th chapter on the merits of the Devi and the story of Satyavrata in the third skandha of the Mahapuranam Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses by Maharshi Veda Vyasa. Chapter 12. The Raja spoke, O Lord, kindly describe the rules and regulations as to how the Devi Yajna is performed with its duly prescribed rites and ceremonies. Hearing it, I will unweariedly perform it as far as it lies in my power, with as little delay as possible. How the worship is done, what are the mantras, what are the articles required for the oblations, how many Brahmins are required, and what dakshinas are to be paid to them. Describe in detail all these. Vyasa said, O Raja, I will tell you duly how the Devi Yajna is performed. Here, the actions are always threefold according as the preparations are made, and according as they are practiced with regard to the observed rules. The threefold divisions are Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. The Munis do the Sattvic puja, the kings celebrate the Rajasic puja, and the Rakshasas do the Tamasic pujas. There is another puja which is devoid of gunas, and which is performed by the liberated wise ones. I will describe to you all these in detail. O Raja, the yajna is then called Sattvic when it is performed in a Sattvic country, like Kashi or so on, in Sattvic time, meaning in Uttarayana, in the half of the year when the sun is approaching the summer solstice rather than the winter solstice, roughly speaking. When the materials collected are earned rightly, when the mantras are those of the Vedas, when the Brahman is Srotriya, when there is sattvic faith, void of any attachment towards the sensual objects, when all these happen to coincide. O Raja, when all the above takes place and where there is purification of materials, actions, and mantras, when the materials are all correct, when the actions are all done as they ought to be, and where there is no error or omission in the mantras, then and only then the yajna becomes perfect and no doubt yields full results. There would be nothing contrary to this. If the yajna is performed with articles not rightly earned, then there is no fame either in this world, nor is there any reward in the next world. Therefore, it is necessary that the yajna should be performed with rightly earned materials. In other words, not like stolen goods or so on. Then there is fame in this world and a better state in the next world, and happiness is also acquired. There is no doubt in this. O Raja, it is before your eyes, as it were, that the Pandavas performed the Rajasuya Yajna, the king of yajnas, and on the completion whereof the excellent dakshinas were paid to the Brahmins and others. In that yajna, the highly intelligent Sri Krishna himself, the lord of the Yadavas, was present, as well as many other Brahmanas like Bharadvaja and other fully enlightened souls. But within 3 months after completing that yajna, the Pandavas suffered extreme hardships and had to live with extreme difficulty as exiles in the forest. Consider the insult shown towards Draupadi, a Pandava's defeat in the play of gambling, their going away to dwell in the forest. These hardships were borne by the Pandavas. What rewards did then the Pandavas derive from the Rajasuya Yajna. All the high-souled Pandavas had to work as slaves of Virata, and Draupadi, the best of women, was very much troubled and insulted by Kichaka. When all these occurred, anyone can easily ask, where were the Ashirvadas of the pure-souled Brahmanas? And what result did they derive from their unflinching devotion towards Sri Krishna when they were involved in the above critical state? No one protected Draupadi, the chaste and the best, the daughter of Drupada, when she was drawn by her hair on her head into the hall of assembly where gambling was being played. O Raja, how could all these happen in a place where Sri Bhagavan Keshava himself and the high-souled Yudhishthira were present? If one argues, one would conclude that there must have been something wrong in that yajna. If you say that nothing happened in the yajna, all these were caused by fate, then it would come to this, that the Vedic mantras, agamas, and the other Vedic rites are all fruitless. If it be argued that though the Vedic mantras are powerful enough to bear fruits, yet whatever is predestined will come to pass, then the proposition resolves into this, that all the means, expedients, and appliances lead to meaningless conclusions. Then the agamas, the Vedas, merely recommend a vidhi or precept by stating the good arising from its proper observance and the evils arising from its omission, and also by adducing historical instances as to its support. In other words, they are powerless as far as bearing fruits is concerned. All the acts are meaningless. Asceticism to attain heaven comes as useless, and the peculiar duties of Varna are fruitless. O Raja, this view is exceedingly culpable. It is never fit for acceptance by the high-souled persons. O Raja, if what is laid by God in the womb of the future, the state of things preordained by God in which it is sure to take place in the fullness of time, be taken as the first-hand proof, then all the other proofs are rendered null and void. Therefore, fate and human exertion both are to be undoubtedly taken into account to ensure success. Human exertions being applied, if the results come otherwise, the wise pundits would infer that some defects, omissions, or imperfections crept into the work. All the pundits, very learned, and institutors of yajnas have classed karmas under different headings according as the agents, mantras, and articles employed in the worship vary. Once on an occasion, Vishvarupa, ordained as a guru by Indra in a yajna, intentionally did things contrary so as to benefit the Daityas who belonged to his mother's side. Vishvarupa uttered repeatedly the mantras beneficial to the Devas while they were present. But during their absence, he prayed heartily for the welfare of the Daityas, and in the long run, he protected the Daityas. On seeing the Asuras gaining strength, Indra, the lord of the Devas, became very much enraged and instantly cut off Vishvarupa's head with his thunderbolt. O Raja, this is then the instance where the contrary fruits were borne out by the agent employed in performing the yajna. There is no doubt in this. This is not possible in the other cases. See again, the king of Panchala performed his yajna to get a son to kill Drona, the son of Bharadvaja. And though he did this out of angry motives, still Drishtadyumna was born out of the fire, and Draupadi too sprang out of the altar. Again, in days of yore, Dasharatha, the king of Kosala, was without sons, and he instituted a yajna to get one son, and lo, he got not one son, but 4. Therefore, O Raja, if the yajna be performed according to proper rules and regulations, it yields fruits in all respects. Again, if it be done unrighteously, without any regard to the rules, etc., it yields results just the contrary. There is no doubt in this. Therefore, there must have been some defects in the yajna of the Pandavas, hence contrary effects ensued. And therefore, the truthful king Yudhishthira and his powerful brothers and the chaste Draupadi were all defeated in the play at dice. It might be that the materials were not of a good stamp. They were all earned by killing kings, good many in number, and earned thus unrighteously. Or it might happen that the Pandavas did their yajna with too much egoism. However, this is certain that there had crept in some defects in their actions. O Raja, the Sattvic yajna is rare. It can be done only by the Sattvic munis who live in the third order of the household life in Vanaprastha ashrama, or who live as hermits. The ascetics that eat daily the Sattvic food, roots and fruits collected from forests and obtained rightly, that is good to the munis, and that is well cleaned and purified, are the only ones that can perform with full devotion to the Sattvic yajnas, where no animals are sacrificed, and where offerings of cakes of ground rice in vessels are given. These are the best of all the Sattvic yajnas. The Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas perform the yajnas with abhimana, with self-conceit, and with ego, where many presents are given, animals are sacrificed, and all things are well cleansed, purified, and elaborately decorated. This type of yajna is called rajasic. That yajna is, according to the sages, tamasic. where the Danavas, puffed up with arrogance, infatuated with anger, jealousy, and wickedness, perform their acts with the sole object of killing their enemies. That is the sankalpa of the yajna. That yajna is called manasa yag, or the manasic, or mental, where the high-souled munis, void of worldly desires, collect mentally rather than physically all the necessary articles and perform the yajna with the sole object of liberation from the bondages of the world. In all the other yajnas, besides the manasa yag, some imperfections or others naturally arise due to some defects in the materials or want of faith, or in the performance, or in the Brahmins. No other yajnas can be so complete as the manasa yajna. The reason being that in the other yajnas, some imperfections come out due to time, place, and separate ingredients to be collected. It's completely impossible to correctly perform a physical yajna. It won't be perfect. That's just not the nature of the physical world. Now here, who are the persons fit to undertake this mental yajna in honor of the great goddess? First, this mind is to be purified by making it void of the gunas. The mind being pure, the body becomes also pure, there is no doubt. When the mind becomes completely pure, after it has abandoned all sensual objects fit for enjoyment, then that person is entitled to perform the mother's yajna. There he should build mentally the big hall for sacrifice, many yojanas wide, so many miles wide, a giant hall that you build in your mind, decorated with high polished pillars out of the materials brought for the purpose. Within the hall, he will imagine a wide and spacious altar and place the holy fire on it mentally, according to due rules and regulations. He is to select mentally the Brahmin priests and consecrate them as Brahma, Adharyu, Hota, Prastota, Udgata, Pratihatra, and the other assistants. He is to worship mentally all these priests. Then he will have to imagine the 5 Vayus, Prana, Apana, Vyana, Samana, and Udana, as the 5 fires, and locate them duly on the altar. Prana Vayu stands for Garhapatya, Apana for Ahavaniya, Vyana for Dakshina, Samana for Avasatya, and Udana for Sabhya Agni. So those are the 5 fires at the yajna. These fires are all very terrible. Then one should, very terrible as in very powerful, like big fires burning very hot. Then one should place these carefully on the altar with great concentration of mind. He is to collect then all the other necessary materials and think that all are very pure and free from any defects, such that they could never be if they were physically real. In the Manasik Yajna, mind is the offerer of oblations, and mind is the Yajamana, the performer of the Yajna, and the presiding deity of the Yajna is the Nirguna Brahman, the great goddess, the Nirguna Shakti, who is always auspicious and gives the feeling of dispassion and indifference to worldly objects, is the awarder of fruits in this Yajna. And so the fruit, by implication, rather than material blessings, is dispassion and indifference toward worldly objects. She is the Brahma Vidya. She is the substratum of all, and she is all-pervading. The Brahman is to take the Devi's name and offer oblations in the fire of prana, the necessary articles for the Devi's satisfaction. Then he is to make his chitta and prana, his thoughts and his breath, void of any worldly thought or any worldly support, and to offer oblations to the eternal Brahman through the mouth of Kundalini, the serpent fire within the spine. Next, within his nirvikalpa mind, by means of samadhi, he should meditate on his own self, the Maheshwari herself, by his own consciousness. Thus, when he will see his own self in all beings and all beings in his own self, then the jiva will get the vision of the goddess Mahavidya, giving moksha. O Raja, after the high-souled munis have seen the goddess of everlasting intelligence and bliss, then he becomes the knower of Brahman. All the Maya, the cause of this universe, becomes burnt up. Only as long as the body remains, the prarabdha karma remains. So in other words, having successfully performed this yajna of inner realization and attained moksha, as long as the body remains, experiences will continue to happen to it. Prarabdha karma will continue to play out. But when the body of a Jivan Mukta drops off, all karma ceases and one attains paramukti. So the jivas become liberated while living, and when the body dissolves, he attains to final liberation. Therefore, O child, whoever worships the mother becomes crowned with success. There is no doubt in this. Therefore, follow the advice of the guru, the spiritual teacher, and with all attention, hear, think, and meditate on the great goddess of the world. O Raja, liberation is sure to ensue of this manasa yajna. All the other yajnas are sakama, with some desire in view, and therefore their effects are temporary. You might get that desire, but it won't last forever. He who wants enjoyments in heaven should perform the Agnishtoma yajna with due rites and ceremonies, such as the Vedic injunction. But when the acquired merit expires, the yajamana will have to come again into this world of mortals. Therefore, the manasa yajna is eternal and best. This manasa yajna is not fit to be performed by rajas intent on getting victory. The yajna that you performed, the sarpa yajna, is tamasic, for you wanted to take vengeance on your enemy, the serpent Takshaka Naga, and millions of snakes were made to be burnt in that sacrifice. O Raja, hear now about the Devi yajna that was performed by Vishnu in the beginning of creation. You better now do that Devi yajna with due rules. I will tell you all about the rules. There are Brahmins that know the rules and know best the Vedas. They know also the seed mantras of the Devi, as well as the rules of their application. They are clever in all the mantras. These will be your priests, and you yourself will be the yajamana. O Raja, do this yajna duly and deliver your father from Naraka by the merit that you will acquire thereby. O sinless one, the sin occurred on account of insulting a Brahmin is serious and leads the sinner to Naraka. Your father committed that sin and incurred the curse from a Brahmin, therefore he has gone down to the Naraka. Your father also died out of a snake bite, which is not a meritorious death. The death occurred also in a palace built high up in the air, instead of taking place on the ground on a bed of kusha grass. O best of the Kurus, the death did not occur in any battle, nor on the banks of the Ganga. Void of proper bathing and charities, he died in a palace. O best of kings, all the ugly causes leading to Naraka were present in the case of your father. See, again, there is also one thing which done will lead to one's liberation, but that was absent too with your father. That is this. Let a man remain wherever he may, whenever he comes to learn that his end is approaching, even if he had not practiced before any good practices or meritorious deeds, and even if he becomes senseless in the trial time of death, when dispassion comes to an individual whose mind gets for the time being clear and free from any worldly thoughts, then he should think thus: this my body, composed of 5 elements, will soon be destroyed. There is no cause whatsoever in having any remorse for it. Let whatever come that it may, I am free, void of qualities. I am the eternal Purusha. Death is not capable to do any harm to me. All the elements are liable to decay and destruction. What remorse can overtake me? I am not a man of the world. I am always free. I am the eternal Brahman. I have got no connection with this body that is merely the outcome of actions. Before I did meritorious or unmeritorious acts leading to happiness and pain. Therefore I have got this mortal coil and I'm enjoying the fruits of my past auspicious or inauspicious karma. Whoever thinks thus and dies, even if he did not take proper purification, he did not take a bath or make any charity, he gets himself freed from the awful samsara and never comes to see himself again born in this world. O Raja, this method of parting from one's body is rarely attained even by yogis. This is the acme, the highest height of all the human efforts toward liberation. But your father, hearing even the curse from a Brahmin, retained his attachment towards his body. Therefore, he did not attain this passion. He thought thus: my body is now free from any disease. My kingdom is free from enemies or any other source of danger. How can I now get myself saved from this untimely death? Thinking thus, he ordered to call the Brahmins who know the mantras. Then that king ascended to the palace with medicines, money mantras, and many other instruments. He considered his fate to be the strongest, and therefore did not take his bath in any holy place. He did not perform any charities, did not sleep on the ground or remember any mantram of the Devi, due to Kali entering into his body. Kali as in the spirit of Kali Yuga. He committed the sin of insulting an ascetic and plunged himself in the ocean of delusion, and died bitten by the Takshaka Naga on the top of a palace. That king has now fallen undoubtedly into the Naraka on account of those vicious deeds. Therefore, O Raja, dost thou deliver your father from the sin. Sutta said, O Rishis, Hearing these words from the fiery Vyasa, Raja Janamejaya became very sad, and tears came from his eyes and flowed down his cheeks and throat. He then exclaimed in a suffocating voice, "Fie on me, my father is still in the Naraka. I will now do at once whatever leads my father to Svarga." Thus ends the 12th chapter on the Amba Yajna rules, in the 3rd Adhyaya of Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the Mahapuranam of 18,000 verses composed by Maharshi Veda Vyasa. Chapter 13. The Raja spoke. "O grandfather, how did Vishnu the powerful, the cause of the world, perform the Devi Yajna? Whose help did he receive, and what priests with their knowledge of the Vedas did he engage? Kindly tell all these to me in special details. I will very attentively hear first this Devi Yajna performed by Vishnu, and then I will make arrangements to do that myself accordingly." Vyasa said, "O noble one, hear in detail that very wonderful thing, how Vishnu celebrated the Devi Yajna conformably to the rules laid down in the Shastras. When Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesha were each given powers by the Devi, the goddess of the universe, and when they parted, these three devas became free from their womanhood, since they had attained female forms for their visit to Manidvipa Loka, while they were coming back in their aerial cars and turned into men as they were before. These three devas found the great ocean before them. They brought out world from it, and built in that world dwelling abodes, and then they themselves began to live in some of them. That world became fixed, steady, the supporter of all beings, when the goddess imparted the power of fixture, steadiness, and the power of supporting the world, the power of supporting to the world. The Stambha and Dharana Shaktis. The earth filled with marrow then became fixed and the great supporter by her power. O Raja, the name of this earth is Medini, since it was made out of the marrow of the two asuras, Madhu and Gaitabha. This earth is termed Dhara because it supports all. It is termed Prithvi because it is very capacious, and it is called Mahi because it is great, since it supports so many beings. O Raja, the Ananta serpent is holding it on her 1,000 hoods. To make the earth remain solid and compact, Brahma built at places mountains. As iron nails in a log of wood, so these hills and mountains within this earth give it stability. Therefore, the Pandits call these mountains Mahidhara, holder of the earth. O Raja, thus the golden Meru, the great mountain, many yojanas wide, adorned with many golden mountain peaks, was created. Next, Marichi, Narada, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Daksha, and Vashishta were created by Brahma. These are the Brahma's Manasaputras, or mental sons, created directly by the sheer power of his mind, not through any mother. The son Kashyapa was born to Marichi, and 13 daughters were born of Daksha. From these daughters, out of the seed of Kashyapa, various devas and daityas were born. Then human beings, animals, nagas, and many other classes of beings were created. This is called the Kashyapi Srishti, or the Kashyapa's creation. Next, Swayambhuva Manu sprang from the lower half of Brahma, and the daughter named Shatarupa came out of the left-hand side of the Brahma's body. The two sons Priyavrata and Uttanapada were born of Manu in the womb of Shatarupa, and the three daughters, very beautiful and fair-complexioned, were also born of him. Creating then the Bhagavan, the lotus-born Brahma built the beautiful Brahmaloka on the top of the mountain Meru. Then the Bhagavan Vishnu built the Vaikuntha city on the top of all the lokas to dwell with his consort Lakshmi. Mahadeva too built the exceedingly beautiful Kailasha and stayed there with his bhutas and played with them at his will. The third loka, termed Svarga, was built on the top of Meru, decorated with various precious gems and jewels and stones. It was fixed as the abode of Indra. When the great ocean was churned, Parijata, the best of all the trees, the elephant Airavata with 4 tusks, the heavenly cow yielding the milk of all desires, the Uchchaisrava horse, and Apsaras, Rambha, and others arose and were taken by Indra. These became the ornaments of Svarga. The moon and Dhanvantari, the great physician, also came out of the churning of the ocean. These, surrounded with many other members, began to shine, being situated above the heavens. O Raja, thus the 3 varieties of human beings, devas, and tiryakas, and their great sub-varieties sprang up. Tiryakas are animals and so on, other types of living beings. The four classes of jivas, Andaja, Svedaja, Udbhija, and Jarayuja, were created, being endowed with the fruits of their past auspicious or inauspicious karmas, as the case may be. Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesha began to play and walk about at their leisures in their respective spheres after they finished all their creations. Thus, the wheel of creation being started, the great god Bhagavan Vishnu Achyuta remained in Leela with Mahalakshmi in his own sphere of Vaikuntha. Then Bhagavan Vishnu, while sitting one day in Vaikuntha, got in his mind the memory of that beautiful island called Manidvipa, adorned with precious stones, gems, and jewels. O Raja, in this Manidvipa, the Bhagavan Vishnu got the vision of the Mahamaya and the auspicious mantra. He now thought to celebrate a yajna in honor of the Devi when he recollected the highest Shakti, the great goddess. He then went out of his abode and invited Brahma, Maheshwara, Kubera, Indra, Varuna, Agni, Yama, Vashishta, Kashyapa, Daksha, Vamadeva, Brihaspati, and others, and began to collect lots of materials necessary for the Devi Yajna. Selecting a site, sattvic, beautiful, and possessing great spiritual powers, Vishnu erected, with the help of the great artists and engineers, a wide, capacious Yajnashala, and for the due celebration and fulfillment appointed 27 priests, who pledged a solemn view to complete duly the Devi Yajna. When the big altar and chitti, the pile of wood for burning, and the stack of sacrificial bricks were finished, the Brahmanas began to recite, slowly, the Devi mantrams with their root mantras. The translator here gives an interesting note that chitti, which literally means the pile of wood for burning, is perhaps the Muladhara, Muladhara chakra, where the fire of the Kundalini is first kindled by the processes of yoga. Then the profuse quantities of ghee were offered as oblations to the sacred fire. Thus, when the Homa ceremony was finished elaborately and conforming to the rules of the Shastras, the sweet and melodious heavenly voice was heard in the air addressing Vishnu Bhagavan thus: O Vishnu, that you be the supreme amongst the gods, honor and worship shall be thine first, and you would be the most powerful of the Devas. Indra, together with Brahma and the other Devas, all will worship you. O Achyuta, O infallible one, those humans on the earth that will be devoted to you will certainly be endowed with power, and you shall be the bestower of boons and all their desires. O Vishnu, you will be the supreme of the Devas, and you will be the god of the gods. You will be the first and foremost in all the yajnas, and you will be worshipped by the yajamanas. People will worship you, and you will favor them with boons. O best of the Purushas, when the Devas will be troubled by the Asuras, they will come and take refuge in thee. You will be the protector of all, there is no doubt in this. In all the Puranas and all the vast Vedas, you will be first worshipped. O Keshava, wherever there will be decay and decline in dharma, you will incarnate in your anshas and preserve the dharma. O Madhava, avatars renowned in all the worlds will come down on earth as your part incarnations in all sorts of wombs in due order, and will be respected by all the high-souled personages. O Madhusudana, those avatars will be the best of all the avatars and will be famous in all the lokas. In all your avatars, you will get your attendants, the Shaktis drawing their energies from my parts, and they will serve all your purposes. Varahi, Narasinghi, etc., and various other Shaktis of auspicious appearances, endowed with various weapons and decked with all the ornaments, will serve as your attendants, no doubt in this. O Vishnu, always with their help, and under the influence of my favor, you will no doubt be quite competent to serve the purposes of the Devas. You should respect and worship all those powers by all means, and with very great attention. Never show the slightest trace of pride to them. Never insult them. These Shaktis, capable of bestowing all desires, will be worshipped in pratimas, in images of clay, and so on, in the whole of Bharata. O Deva of the Devas, the fame of all these Shaktis, as well as of you, will be spread in the 7 worlds and in the whole universe. O Hari, the human beings on this earth will constantly worship, with selfish ends, these Shaktis and you, for the fructification of their desires. Having various desires, humans will in your worship present various offerings, recite the Veda mantrams, and repeat the names of you and the Shaktis. O Vishnu, you will be the god of the immortals, and your glory will be enhanced by the worship offered by the human beings in the world as well as in the heavens. Vyasa said, O Raja, the heavenly voice thus bestowing boons on Vishnu ceased. Vishnu Bhagavan became very glad to hear this. Then Hari, the god of gods, completed duly the yajna and dismissed the Devas and the Munis, the sons of Brahma. Then, ascending on Garuda, he went up to Vaikuntha with his followers. The Devas also went to their own respective places. The Munis also retired gladly to their own hermitages, all thunderstruck to see these things, conversing with each other about this yajna. O Raja, all were filled with best devotion towards the Parashakti on hearing this clear, beautiful, sonorous heavenly voice. Then the Dvijas, the Munis, and Munindras began to worship with devotion according to the Vedas that Adi Shakti, the supreme goddess, giving all desired objects profusely in all the details. Here ends the 13th chapter on the Devi Yajna by Sri Vishnu, and the 3rd Adhyaya in Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the Mahapuranam by Maharishi Veda Vyasa. And I think that might be a good point to stop, because the next chapter begins an entirely new story, which continues into following chapters. And so I think that's probably a good place to start in at the beginning of next time. Thank you all very much for coming. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
May we ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. What is this? What's the Manasa Yagya?
Manasa means mental yajna. So done entirely in meditation. Physically, you're just sitting there with your eyes closed. The entire yajna is done in the mind. That's what a Manasa Yagna refers to.
And what, in summary, what is the process mentally?
We kind of had a whole page of it going through it.
Okay, I thought, all right.
Yeah.
I can go back to that.
Yeah, so I'm happy to go through it again. I do think that's an important point. So I've mentioned a couple times, this physical book I have is my father's old copy. He underlined every word of that page. And he hasn't made any notes on all the rest of the chapters. He underlined every word of the Manasa Yajna instruction.
Wow.
Or it actually didn't underline, but sidelined it. He starred the whole page. So to go again through that process.
Thank you.
First, this mind is to be purified by making it void of the gunas. Perhaps easier said than done. That's step one. When the mind becomes completely pure, after it has abandoned all sensory objects for enjoyment, then that's step one. With the mind being pure, the body also becomes pure. So don't even worry about physical purification. If you purify the mind, the body is pure. Then build mentally the big hall for sacrifice, many yojanas wide. So a yojana it varies. There's a couple different standards for yojana. One was about 5.5 miles, one was about 8 miles. So many yojanas wide. So we're talking like at least 20 miles wide or bigger.
This is done in the mind.
All in the mind. You don't do anything physically other than sit there with your eyes closed. In the mind, you build this, decorated with high polished pillars out of the materials brought for the purpose. Within the hall, imagine a wide and spacious altar and place the holy fire on it mentally. Select the Brahmin priests. So imagine choosing which Brahmins you want as your priests, which as the Brahma, which as the Advaryu, the Hota, the Prashtota, the Udgata, the Pratihatra, and the other assistants, and mentally worship all of the priests. Then imagine the 5 Vayus, the 5 winds of the body, the motions of prana within the body, the prana, the apana, the dhyana, the samana, and the udana, the 5 breaths of yoga within the body. Each of them kindles a fire as the 5 fires and locate them on the altar. Prana vayu as the garhapatya fire, that's the household fire that cooks food and so on. Apana vayu for the ahavaniya fire, vyana vayu for the dakshina, the southern fire, samana vayu for the avasatya fire, udana vayu for the sabya agni. These fires, so the translator said these fires are all very terrible. What he means by terrible is very hot and intense and powerful. Then one should place these carefully on the altar with great concentration of mind. He is to collect all the other necessary materials and think that they are all very pure and free from any defects. So collect all the materials for the offering, again, mentally. All of this you do in your mind.
Wow.
In the Manasak Yajna, mind is the offerer, mind is the performer of the sacrifice. The presiding deity is the Nirguna Brahman, the unmanifest, formless Brahman without qualities. The great goddess, the Nirguna Shakti, who is auspicious and gives the feeling of dispassion and indifference to worldly objects, is the awarder of fruits. So what you are, well, that's not part of the instructions, that's part of the results. Take the Devi's name and offer oblations in the fire of Purana, the necessary articles for the Devi's satisfaction. Then he is to make his chitta and prana void of any worldly thought or any worldly support. The chitta is the thoughts, and the prana is the breath. And to offer oblations to the eternal Brahman through the mouth of the Kundalini. So in other words, the practice here is in meditation to raise the Kundalini to the crown chakra. And in so doing, merge your mind into pure transcendence beyond thought. Next, within his nirvikalpa mind, meaning, so the nirvikalpa mind means in the state of pure samadhi, beyond thought. By means of samadhi, he should meditate on his own self, the Maheshwari herself, by his consciousness. So essentially, what we're describing here is a process of yogic meditation, of the culmination of Kundalini and the attainment of pure nirvikalpa samadhi. Essentially, attaining complete enlightenment by the process of yogic meditation is what's being referred to as the culmination of the Manasa Yajna. So obviously that's easier said than done. What's being described here is that the Manasa Yajna of the true Manasa Yajna of the Devi is just a way of expressing the complete culmination of the entire process of yoga.
Wow.
Yeah. So while it begins with this visualization meditation of building the hall and setting up the fire altar of the Devi, what it really becomes is the process of Kundalini yoga.
Wow.
Yeah, that is the actual Devi Yajna.
Huh. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
One other question, if I may.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Raja Janamejaya for a while there.
Yes.
And
all of this is being told to Raja Janamejaya. He's the audience.
The entire Devi Bhagavatam is, yeah. Okay.
Most of it, certainly everything we were reading today is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he's Parikshit's King Parikshit's son.
Yes.
And in this story, once again, we now this came up a couple Sundays ago, where it told the story of Parikshit dying in a tower in his kingdom, in his castle, and then we had that, you answered that question as to that being an entirely different kalpa or yuga or kalpa?
Kalpa. It doesn't recur every yuga cycle. The entire cycle that recurs with the kalpa cycle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is a different one then. So this is the same King Parikshit in a different kalpa as the Parikshit in the beloved Srimad Bhagavatam story of Krishna.
Yes, entirely different Parikshit in a different kalpa. Yes.
Different, like kind of the same spirit or soul or whatever.
No,
but
no, not even. Totally different soul. The same. So in the kalpa, it tends towards some of the same manifestations, such as a king named Parikshit with the same lineage. Not even the same. There's even differences in the lineage. A similar lineage. and so on. But it's inwardly, in terms of their consciousness, an entirely different person, not the same soul.
Wow. Interesting. Right.
A different soul
Because
plays the role.
Yeah, because of course today we went into the fact that this Parikshit is in hell while Raja Janmaya is here.
Yes. Yes. This Parikshit was this Parikshit essentially lived, at least the latter part of his life, as a fairly selfish sinner.
Wow.
He mistreated a Brahmin, never made any recompense for it. And when cursed, he did nothing good for anyone. He had no thought for charity or the welfare of his people. He was just obsessed with trying to save his life.
Whoa.
He never met Shuka Goswami, never had any devotion to Krishna. Completely different person from the Parikshit referred to in the Bhagavatam.
But then what are the parallels? The name and, getting killed by a snake and etc.
Same parents, same kingdom. He
Right.
was a person in the same position, but he has total free will as to what he does within that position. And this Parikshit chose to follow a totally different path. That Parikshit attained moksha in that very life. The Bhagavatam ends with when Takshaka comes to bite him. That Parikshit is sitting there in a state of complete moksha, welcomes Takshaka. It actually says that as Takshaka bites him, not the venom of Takshaka, but the fire of his own renunciation burns his body to ashes, and he merges with Krishna in that moment. This Parikshit was completely different. Not a trace of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. But it's almost like, they're different souls, different beings, but then they're fulfilling the same role in their kalpa.
Yes.
Like they're necessary, like how there'd be an Indra that takes a Congress person or something like that. But it's there's a different president now, but there's there's the president, but it's different than it was in 1990. And like, so there's a Parikshit is kind of like a role that someone fulfills in a kalpa, but it goes up to a different soul in each time, possibly, kind of thing.
Yes. Now I'm actually not aware of anywhere in the Shastras that says that there is a Parikshit in every kalpa. Some roles do occur in every kalpa. Parikshit, I don't know. He may or may not be. Certainly, he is clearly an important enough role that he occurs in multiple kalpas. I don't know if it's every time.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Thanks so much, Deva.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. And good questions. All right. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Mata Rani ki jai.
Jai.
Jai.